1945, Oscar night. Bing Crosby wins Best Actor. The role he played, a loving priest. Applause fills the entire hall. Bing smiles, speaks humbly, and has the Best Father award waiting for him at home. But that same night, in his Los Angeles home, his 7-year-old son Gary is hiding in a locked closet, because when his father comes home, if something has gone wrong, the belt will come out, and one of the darkest nights of his life will begin. This isn't Bing Crosby's story. This is the story of one of America's biggest lies, the story of how a man deceived millions with love, warmth, and perfection, but inflicted hell on his 4 children at home. And the most painful part of this story is this: the truth didn't come out until years after Bing died, because until then, no one dared to speak. To understand Bing Crosby, you first need to understand 1940s America. World War II had just ended, soldiers were returning home, families were reuniting. And there was only one thing everyone needed: hope, security, warmth. And Bing Crosby represented exactly that. His voice reached millions of homes every evening through the radio. White Christmas had become a hymn for remembering loved ones lost in the war. His films made people laugh and warmed their hearts. Especially the film Going My Way transformed him from just a singer into a symbol. In the film, Bing played the role of a young, fun-loving, affectionate priest serving in a small church. He gave people hope. He made them smile. And when he won the Oscar for this performance in 1945, everyone thought the same thing. Bing Crosby isn't just a good actor, he must be like this in real life too, because that's what the media showed. Magazine covers were filled with Bing Crosby's family photos, playing with his children in the garden, smiling with his wife Dixie Lee. Headlines reading "America's Happiest Family" were everywhere. In interviews, Bing would talk about fatherhood. "My children are everything to me. Giving them the best education, raising them as good people is my greatest responsibility." America believed him, because it was impossible not to love Bing Crosby. He was the American dream personified. But in the house in Holmby Hills, behind the cameras, the reality was completely different. Gary Crosby was the eldest of Bing's 4 sons from his first marriage: Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay. 4 brothers. From the outside, they were lucky children. They had a famous father, a big house, they went to private schools, but luck is only what appears from the outside. Gary would describe those days years later in his book. "We knew what time our father would come home. It was usually around 6 o'clock, and the 4 of us brothers would wait silently inside the house, because we couldn't know what kind of mood our father was in that day. If he came home happy, maybe he'd greet us, maybe make a few jokes at dinner, maybe ignore us. But if he came home angry, then hell would begin." Bing Crosby was a dictator in his home. He expected absolute obedience from his children. There was no talking at the table. Meals were eaten at specific times. Housework had to be done perfectly. Grades had to be perfect, and if any of these were lacking, the belt would come out. According to Gary's account, Bing had no reservations about physical punishment. He would take out his belt, force his children to bend over, and hit them, sometimes 10 times, sometimes 20. Gary, Dennis, Philip, Lindsay, they all received the same treatment. But the worst part wasn't the physical violence. The worst part was the psychological pressure. Bing never said "I love you" to his children. He never hugged them. He never celebrated their achievements. When Gary became captain of the football team in high school, Bing didn't even come to the game. When Dennis played the lead role in a school musical, Bing said he was busy. But the most painful thing was the contradiction. Because Bing Crosby was playing a loving priest in the film Going My Way at the studio, while singing White Christmas on the radio, he moved millions. He smiled with his children in photographs. Gary never forgot the day one of those photographs was taken. 1948, a family photo shoot for Life magazine. The photographer came. Bing went out to the garden, called the children over. "Come on, smile," said the photographer, and Bing hugged his children. He smiled. He acted like a loving father. The photos were taken. They were perfect. Then the photographer left. Bing immediately moved away from the children. "Get lost now," he said. "The game is over." Gary described that moment like this: it was like he pressed a button. When the camera was on, he was the loving father. When the camera was off, he became a stranger made of ice. And we children, we knew this, but we couldn't say anything, because who would believe us? We were Bing Crosby's children, the luckiest children in the world. Bing's first wife, Dixie Lee, was a successful actress and singer in the 1930s. In fact, she had started her career before Bing. But when she married Bing, her career ended. Bing didn't allow Dixie to work. "A Crosby wife doesn't go on stage," he had said. Dixie obeyed her husband. She stayed home. She took care of 4 children, and slowly disappeared. Gary remembered his mother like this. My mother always looked sad. There was an emptiness in her eyes. My father controlled her. He decided what she would wear, where she would go, who she would talk to. My mother would just say yes, Bing. And the most painful thing, Dixie couldn't protect her children. Gary wrote in his book, "When my father beat me, my mother would just watch. Sometimes she would cry, but she would never intervene. Because if she intervened, my father would yell at her too. 'This is my son. I'll do what I want,' he'd say." Dixie drowned her pain in alcohol. Over the years, she became an alcoholic. She was often found drunk at home. When she died of ovarian cancer in 1952, she was only 40 years old. At the funeral, Bing didn't cry. He stood cold and distant. Gary looked at his father's face at his mother's funeral and thought, "This man feels nothing." Bing Crosby had a heart attack while playing golf in Spain and died. He was 74 years old. The world mourned. His funeral was held with state ceremony. President Carter sent a message. Frank Sinatra, Bob Hope, everyone was there. But the 4 sons sitting in the front row weren't crying. After the funeral, Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay quietly left. They didn't speak to the press. They didn't even say nice things about their father. They just said, "We lost our father." That's all, and they remained silent for 6 years, until 1983. That year, Gary Crosby was 49 years old. He had acted throughout his life, but he never escaped his father's shadow. Everywhere he went, he was known as Bing Crosby's son, and this felt like a curse to him. Gary struggled with alcohol and drug addiction for years. He attempted suicide twice. He went to therapy, and one day in therapy, his therapist told him, "Gary, you will never heal without telling the truth about your father." Gary was hesitant. "But who would believe me?" He said, "Bing Crosby is America's darling. I'm just a failed son." The therapist insisted, "Write the truth, write a book, make your voice heard," and Gary wrote. In 1983, his autobiography Going My Own Way was published. The book was a bombshell. In the first pages, Gary described how his father applied physical violence, the belt, the slaps, the yelling. Then he described the psychological violence, the cold looks, the belittling, the lack of love. Then he described his mother's helplessness, and finally he wrote, "My father was a monster. America loved him, but we 4 brothers hated him." When the book was published, the media was shocked, but the first reaction was denial. "This can't be," they said. "Bing Crosby wasn't like that." Bing's old friends attacked Gary. Bob Hope, "Gary is a liar. He spent his father's money. Now he's making up stories to sell books." Phil Harris, "Bing was a perfect father. I worked with him for years. I never saw anything like this." Catherine Crosby, Bing's second wife, "Gary is sick. He's jealous of his father." But then Dennis spoke. Dennis Crosby, Gary's brother, said in an interview, "Gary wrote everything correctly. Our father really was like that, and I experienced the same things." Then Philip spoke. "Yes, it's true. Our father would hit us with a belt." Lindsay remained silent, but the confirmation of 2 brothers was enough. Now the truth was out. Hollywood fell silent, because they didn't know what to do. How could they defend a legend? But on the other hand, all 4 sons were saying the same thing. The media slowly began to change. At first they portrayed Gary as a resentful son, but then people started asking questions. What about Dixie's alcoholism? What about Bing's cold demeanor? What about those perfect photographs? And one more thing came out. Bing had 3 more children from his second marriage, Harry, Mary, and Nathaniel. When they were growing up, Bing was much older and softer. He didn't hit them with a belt, but this didn't change what he did to his first 4 sons. After the book was published, Gary felt a bit relieved. "I finally told the truth," he said in an interview. "Now I'm free." But his brothers weren't. 1989, Lindsay Crosby shot himself at home. He was 51 years old. His suicide note said, "I can't take it anymore." 1991, Dennis Crosby shot himself at home. He was 56 years old. His suicide note said, "My father's ghost won't leave me." Philip survived, but struggled with depression and alcohol for years. And Gary, 12 years after his book, he died of lung cancer in 1995. He was 62 years old. In his last interview, he said, "Did I forgive my father? I don't know. But I'm not afraid of him anymore, and that's enough." Today, when you mention Bing Crosby, you get 2 different reactions. Some say he was a magnificent artist. White Christmas still makes me cry. Some say he was a monster. He tortured his children. Both are true, because Bing Crosby was 2 different people. In front of the camera, he was a loving, warm, funny man. Behind the camera, he was a cold, harsh, merciless father. After Gary's book, things began to change in Hollywood. People could no longer say celebrities' private lives don't matter, because private life meant character, and character was more important than anything. Today there is much more awareness about child abuse, but in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, no one was talking, because they said it was a family matter. When Gary Crosby spoke, he didn't just tell his own story, he spoke on behalf of thousands of silent children. Let's go back to 1945, Oscar night. Bing Crosby takes the stage, receives his award, gives thanks. "I accept this award for my family," he says. Applause. That same night at home, Gary is hiding in a locked closet, because he knows that one of his grades came back low at school that day, and if his father finds out, the belt will come out. 2 scenes, 1 truth. Bing Crosby was America's most beloved man, but at the same time, he was a monster that his 4 children feared. And the most tragic thing is this: Bing probably didn't even think it was wrong. What was called discipline back then is called abuse today. Bing thought he was being tough but fair, but his children only saw the tough side. When Gary's book was published, some asked, "Why are you speaking after your father's death?" Gary's answer was simple: "Because if I spoke while he was alive, no one would believe me. But now the truth speaks. And the truth is this: Bing Crosby was a great artist, but he was a terrible father. Both can exist at the same time. And that is perhaps the most painful truth. Today when you listen to White Christmas, maybe you'll feel differently, because now you know what was behind that voice." 3 of Bing Crosby's 4 sons committed suicide. 1 died of cancer. All of them struggled with their father's shadow throughout their lives, and they all wanted just one thing: to be loved. But Bing Crosby never gave them that. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe his own father never gave it to him. Maybe he was also a victim. But that doesn't excuse what he did. When Gary Crosby told the truth in 1983, he wasn't just a son, he was a survivor. And because he had the courage, thousands of people today are telling their own stories, because truth is always more powerful than a mask. And Bing Crosby's mask finally fell. America loved a legend, but 4 children tried to survive a monster, and both were the same man.